Actually, and I'd be a lot more comfortable if I had a Mr. Sulu who would sit here to fly so that I, because I'm, just sit in the chair. That would be great. So amazing. So we've got one more minute, but
Yes.
is that me?
First meeting.
I've got, so, yeah, all right, so this is my mic. All right, very good. How about that? Well, it appears to be the appointed hour, almost. We got just a couple of other seconds here. And I think we've got everything together. But here we are. So we will bring the Small Business Commission to order. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for being here. This is a remarkable event. The very first time I've gotten to be in a meeting in this wonderful new building, and certainly with all this new technology that's here, this is pretty astounding. So welcome to everyone, and thank everybody for attending. I am, for those of you who might not know, I am Delegate Chris Head, and I'm now also Senator-elect Chris Head, and I'm co-chair along with Senator John Bell. Senator Bell is not able to be with us today, and so I'll be chairing the meeting in its entirety. And as just some opening comments, we're in an interesting posture here because I'm leaving the House and am moving over to the Senate, which means that my appointment to the Small Business Commission will end at the end of this year. And Senator Bell is retiring from the Senate, which means that his appointment to the Small Business Commission will also end at the end of this year. And until we have new appointments after we start the new session, we won't know who will be holding a gavel or how this is going to look or what will be coming in the future. But it has been a great honor to be a part of this body for a long time, and we'll look forward to the comments on some things. We've got several agenda items to go over today, and we're going to have a nice presentation from Director Roth, and looking forward to what she will share with us in follow-up from some earlier things that we had last year in our meetings. And to get things started, we do have some new members that I would like to have introduced, and probably be a good idea to have everybody come down the line. But first of all, we have as new members Harshad Barat, also Thomas Leonard, and Giuseppe Lenzoni. And if I could, Mr. Barat, if you could start us and just give a bit of introduction. If you would just touch the button in front of your microphone, which I believe looks to be the one to your right, and there's a little tab on the bottom at the front that will turn the light to green, and we can hear from you then. So,
good afternoon, everybody. My name is Harshad K. Barat. I come from Virginia Beach, and I'm in a hotel business. I love to be a part of this organization because we want to improve the quality and the life of a small business. As we all know, small business is the backbone of any economy. Our governor is doing a wonderful job. We need to help him. Thank you for being a part of this organization.
all right. And Mr. Leonard.
Hi, my name is Tom Leonard. I have a small business here in Richmond and part of a family business up in Connecticut and New York. But I'm very excited to be here. This is my very first meeting. So I'd like to get a picture here because my wife won't believe it when she looks at this. But I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm more than happy to help any way I can. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Lenzoni. All right.
My name is Lee Vogler. I'm a member of the Danville City Council. I'm also a small business operator. I've been a member of the Small Business Commission for a couple of years now and really enjoyed it, and I look forward to continuing the conversations. And while I can put in a cheap plug for my city, if y'all haven't been to Danville lately, I invite you to come check it out. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melissa Ball. I live in Hanover County and own 2 businesses in Henrico. I have CP Dean Company and Ball Office Products, and look forward to continuing to support small business through our efforts here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Atkinson. I'm CEO of AIS Network. We're a Henrico-based small business. We are an IT firm primarily supporting state government in this market. This is the beginning of my second year on the Small Business Commission. I was appointed here because I'm passionate about small business, and I've got a lot of experience working with the state government, and believe I've got a lot to offer.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Travis Hackworth. I am the newly drawn 5th District that represents from Tazewell County all the way up to Blacksburg, and it's an honor to serve on this committee. I own several small businesses and manufacturing, home building, real estate, car dealership, different things. So small business, I would agree and echo the comments from some of the earlier committee members. It is the backbone of our community and our state and our nation. So very excited to serve on this committee and want to bring some common sense and some real life examples to the Commonwealth. So it's just a pleasure to be here and serve on this committee.
You've already heard from me as the chair. I didn't add that I am also a small business owner owning a home care company in Roanoke and Lynchburg. And as we've moved over to the legislator side of things, the nice thing about this committee right now is that I think every legislative member is a small business owner. So that's really, really helpful. So, Doug, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tommy Wright. I'm from Victoria, Virginia, and Southside, Virginia. I represent the newly drawn 50th House District, which includes Lunenburg, Mecklenburg, Prince Edward, Charlotte, and a part of Halifax. I previously was in the grocery business. We operated a family grocery store for 40 years. So I'm very familiar with small business, and I think we need some representation for those type businesses with all the things they have facing them and during these times. Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be on this commission.
And Delegate Hall, I think that's actually your mic if you'll, that Delegate Wright was using, if you'll just pull that one over there.
Yeah, I caught that. This is my second meeting in this room, so I knew which was, yes, I'm Delegate Karen Greenhall. I represent the 85th District of Virginia Beach. I've been on the Small Business Commission for 2 years, and I was actually honored to have the Small Business Commission endorse one of my bills for the BPOL licensing, just to give more transparency to protect our small businesses from being taken advantage of. So that's been a real honor. It's an honor to have been on the Small Business Commission and an honor to serve Virginia Beach.
Well, thank you all. And now we're going to hear from the Virginia Department of Workforce Development Director, Carrie Roth. Carrie, you want to come share with us and give us some updates about what's going on? So.
It is truly exciting to be here as one of the first meetings in this room, so that's always I get to do that. But I also want to start by thanking this commission. Last year when I presented, I previously was commissioner of the Virginia Employment Commission, and this body had a conversation and did send a letter recommending the support of the consolidation and the creation of the new Workforce Development Agency. So thank you all so much for your support of that. And like everybody up on the panel, it's very exciting to also say that myself, Kathy Byron, who's our Deputy Director for External Affairs, and Angela Kelly-Wysick, who is our Chief Deputy Director of the agency, all have had our own businesses. So, and also I've spent a lot of my time supporting small businesses, in particular emerging technology businesses. So we share with you all the common mission of making sure that Virginia is the best state for all businesses, but in particular our small businesses. So I just really, if I leave with you all anything today, this is the most important slide here. What is the economic landscape for what I call the Virginia opportunity? We have nearly 4.5 million employed Virginians and nearly 233,000 more since January of 2022. Our labor force participation rate is at 66.8%, which is the highest rate since April of 2012, and has increased 2.4% since January of 2022. Our unemployment rate in September was 2.5%, and as of August, there were 274,000 job openings in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So while we have all these really great things, it's also important to notice that we also have some great opportunities to continue to drive talent into these job openings across the Commonwealth to be able to continue to support our business growth. Since January of 2022, here is where our leading growth sectors have been. Leisure and hospitality has led the way at 7.5% growth, education and health services following that, and information technology comes right there behind them. So you also have to remember that this is the growth of where we came out of the pandemic. It's hard to remember where things were a year and a half ago, but really, if you had looked at those numbers a little bit, before, it took a while for our leisure and hospitality to get back off the ground. It really has been driving the strength, and as a leading industry sector in the Commonwealth, we would hope and expected to see that activity. And all of our regions are experiencing job growth. Winchester and Northern Virginia are there at 4.7%, but you can see the Harrisonburg area, again, this is January 2022 through September of 23, has experienced the largest increase of percentage of growth right there. But all regions across the Commonwealth have experienced growth, which is exactly what we want to see. But we also understand why residents were not working in September of 2023. And you can see the largest driver that we have is over 1 million people said because they're retired. And the other reasons following that, sick or disabled, another reason that was in a category of that we asked, almost 77,000 folks responded that they don't want to be employed at this time. And almost that same number said that they were laid off or furloughed. But you can see that the retirement is really driving why folks are not working or participating in the labor force in the Commonwealth. And then also going back to August, why did Virginia payroll workers leave their jobs in August of 2023? By and large, it's because people quit their job. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't quit and go get another job. That just means they have great confidence in the labor market that if they leave their job, that they can go and quickly find another job here in the Commonwealth. You can see that other separations is a very small fraction, but our quits are continuing to drive the JOLTS numbers that we have in the Commonwealth. And the reason why you're seeing August numbers and not September numbers to compare, the JOLTS numbers lag a month, so that's why you have the different months of comparison. So looking at our Virginia establishments by employment size, it's, as you all know, our small businesses are what's driving the strength of our economy, and you can really see how the under 50 employees are really taking off. You can see from quarter 1, 2022 to quarter 1 of 2023, that significant difference there. 50 to 500 employees continues to increase as well. And then we have a lower variance between the 500 and more employees for the employment size of the various entities of our establishments across the Commonwealth. This chart here is looking at rural economic development. So what we can see is the 0 to 19 employees, that industry size there for the small businesses is where you saw the primary growth compared to the rest of Virginia, where 50 to 249 employees was across Virginia. It was very comparable. 500 and more employees, you saw that was a larger strength if you look Virginia-wide compared to rural Virginia, but still 42% is there in rural Virginia. And then our 5-year growth by the size of employees, you can see the variances between March of 2018 and March of 2023. Some of these, you're going to see the variances and numbers just when this data is available for us. So this is going back to the first quarter of this year. But our 20 to 49 employees and our 10 to 19 employees and 5 to 9, but really the fewer than 5 is really where you're seeing, a big difference in growth until you get all the way up to the 1,000 or more employees. And I also go back to the quit slide, right? So a lot of people, when they quit their job, they go and they start up their own company. And usually when they go and start up their own company, they're going to fall into that fewer than 5 category. So looking at surveying around the small business and their optimism, it did dip in September as inflation remained a top problem, but also 43% of the owners reported that job openings were hard to fill, remaining historically high as owners can't hire enough workers. So really, it's that talent can continue to drive how we can grow the establishments across the Commonwealth, and that's really the value of focusing with a new workforce agency so we can have that primary look into our activities and are we driving the outcomes that we need for our businesses. As you all know, everything that we do, our customer is the center of our activity, and really making sure that we are being responsive to the customers and making sure that we are doing the things that we need to do, but also listening to what the needs are and responding to those needs. Small business owners are expecting better business conditions over the next 6 months, deteriorated 6 points from August to a net negative 43 seasonally adjusted. However, it was 18 points better than last June's reading of a net negative 61%. 43% seasonally adjusted of owners reported that job openings were hard to fill. That's up 3 points from August and remaining historically high as owners can't hire enough workers. Seasonally adjusted, a net 23% plan to raise compensation in the next 3 months, down 3 points from August. The net percent of owners raising average selling prices increased 2% to a net 29 seasonally adjusted, still at a very inflationary level. And the net percent of owners who expect real sales to be higher increased from 1 point from August to a net 13, but still a challenging posture for our businesses. So looking at a survey question going back into August to our small businesses, in the last 2 weeks, did this Virginia business have trouble hiring paid employees? And we're really looking at the small microcosm. Some of this was in response to the questions that we got from you all last year, so you're probably wondering, why am I tailoring down to these numbers? And we were trying to listen to what you all's questions are and making sure that we're addressing those, and happy to provide any other follow-up numbers that you all are interested in. But our employees said 15% said yes, but 21% no. Between 5 and 19, 31% said yes, 25% no, and 20 or more employees, 44% said yes, and 37% said no. And then looking at in the last 2 weeks, did this Virginia business have trouble hiring paid employees? Really, they haven't seen the 4 and fewer reported decreasing difficulty hiring in 2023. So this goes back to July of 2022. We're really, through BLS, through the census, we were really starting to get more data than we used to have before. The JOLTS numbers, for example, are still new numbers. So really trying to make sure that we can give you all a broad-based view of the activity. And in the last 2 weeks, how did prices this business pays for goods or services change? For 20 or more employees, the prices increased. Between 5 and 19 points, we had a slight decrease, as well as for fewer employees, a slight decrease. And then our employers that have the larger number of employees have reported more positive sales trends compared to smaller employees. And you can see that on that blue line is ticking up for our 20 more employees, and our smaller employees, establishments with smaller employees have that negative decline. And in 6 months from now, how do you think this business's number of paid employees will have changed? 4 or fewer employees, see that we'll have a slight increase. Between 5 and 19 have a slight decrease, and then 20 or more employees, again, seeing an increase with the optimism. And then I think this kind of also goes alongside the trend that we saw before of the establishments and the size and the growth that we've seen. And this goes back to 2006, but you can see we have a continued number of and a doubling of the number of small business applications compared to corporate applications. And then going back in, to 2020, when the latest statistics were available on this, really, I think our professional, scientific, and technical services are our largest sector growth that are there, followed by transportation and warehousing and construction. And I sometimes hesitate to show 2020 numbers because the world has changed since these 2020 numbers, and so the economy is disruptive. But it's a good benchmarking to see where we were and where our strengths go and where we're starting to drive. If you look at this and you look at some of the, the leisure and hospitality, you see the significant growth, and professional and scientific services have always been a continued strength and growth that we're seeing across the Commonwealth. And then our Virginia non-employer firms, total annual payroll. So these are individuals. It's not a large business with their annual payroll. You see our real estate there is driving that. And again, professional, scientific, and technical services falls right behind that, along with construction. Here's just an overview of firms that are single owner firms. 2021, 60% were male, and 75% of the owners were not of a minority group. So do you have any, before I switch to the new agency, I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have on any of the numbers that we presented.
I actually got a couple before we dig too far on in there, and maybe some others will as well. The labor force participation rate at 66.8% is pretty remarkable, best in 12 years. Unemployment rate of 2.5%, and roughly 2% is unemployable. So we're almost at full employment of everything, and yet there are people, and I'm one of them, who had employees, and we've struggled for good employees for a number of years, but today I know in my business I pay my hourly workers nearly 30% more than I did in 2020 pre-COVID, and yet my workforce is only slightly more than 50% of what it was pre-COVID, and we are desperately trying to find people to meet the needs, in my case, of providing care for senior adults. You also showed why residents are not working, and that number of retirements. I know that my workforce had a significant number of retirement age people that during COVID left the workforce altogether. And so I'm wondering, on that chart, what would that have looked like in 2019? Do we have that data anywhere?
I don't have it here, but I certainly can pull that for you all, and we'll get that. I'll send it out to the.
We could see just to see what the growth was in folks that are just not choosing to work, and the labor force participation rate. Can you talk a little bit about how that is calculated? Because that to me is always much more of an important statistic than the unemployment rate, because the unemployment rate, how that's calculated, sort of changes as the wind blows from Washington. But the labor force participation rate, not so much. So, but still, what's the formula for that?
Yeah, so the difference between the unemployment rate and the labor force participation rate, the unemployment rate is relative to those who are actively seeking a job. So if you're not looking for a job, then you're out of the labor force. So that's the difference, is you have a desire to work, we have seen that increase as more people continue to come off of the sidelines to go into drive into, I do want to have a job. So if you are no longer looking for a job, then you're not included into that unemployment rate. Does that make sense there? So we do. I mean, I think that is that key. So that 2.4% increase since January 2022 is a significant increase in our labor force participation rate, but we know that we can get more. We're at the noted that there was 233,000 more Virginians working since January 2022. We also have the largest number of Virginians ever working. So yes, I realize that you would go and say, okay, well, population changes and that goes back to the mid-'70s when they started tracking. But you saw a very, very slow decline if you look over the last 10 years. So to see this big increase in the labor force participation and employed Virginians is a sign of the strength and the resiliency that people feel, and that also goes into the confidence level of people quitting, that they really do believe that they can quickly get another job, whatever they choose to do. So hopefully that answered your question. But that I would say the labor force participation rate is really where you want to look, because typically you would think at 5% you're at full employment. So to be at 2.5%, but we are starting to continue to be not impacted by the pandemic impacts of the economy, but I think you're also seeing the inflation is the challenging wind that continues to come and getting folks into the labor force too.
So we still have roughly 33% of the people that are not participating, and that's, I mean, you're at 66, 67%. You're almost as high as it is ever going to get. But who's counted in that number as the labor force? Are the retirees a part of that 100% number?
Not if they're not seeking work.
So if they're not working because they are retired, then they no longer count as part
Correct.
of that workforce.
Right.
But pre-pandemic, those people might have been.
Correct.
So are there pockets of folks that we might entice to come back?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw over the pandemic, the biggest loss that we saw of employees in the Commonwealth was really the active male age between 22 and early 50s was where we really saw the loss, which was surprising to a lot of folks as to what has done. And we've kind of evened off right now that we have equal male and female participation rate for the individual genders that are occurring right now. There are a lot of people that were still, can move off the sidelines to people who want to retire early, come back in and start some type of job, whether it's a full-time job or not a full-time job, but I think that's, we are also doing a lot of work with disadvantaged or underserved populations, try to also make sure that we get them captured in the tools and the training that they need to participate in the labor force. So it's a multi-pronged effort to be able to continue to increase that labor force participation rate to be able to meet those job opening needs that we have.
Microphone here and the questions if anybody else has any, but this is, I will tell you, during the campaign season, the lack of workforce for folks was probably what I heard about more than anything else from businesses, that we got to have people, we got to have people, we got to have people, and yet we get stats that say everybody's working. And that seems to be an almost contradictory statement if they had people before. So I'm just trying to sort of sort that out. But if anybody else have any questions for the Commissioner?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Ms. Roth, for the information. And I was just going to ask, do we have and can we get data that actually shows how many of the almost 4.5 million employed Virginians are working more than one job?
I will see if we can get that.
Because I would wonder how many of those that are working 2 and 3 jobs, because I would say that, some of us that employ, we're trying to get employees that it's not even their primary job, just to come in and to fill some of the slots, whether part-time or whatever. I'd like to see that data. And also, it's kind of odd, and I don't know if it's just geographical, but a lot of times your younger employees are more interested in wages than benefits, and they will quit and go to another job that brings in more money, even though benefits may be less. If we could have some data on that, I would like to see some data on that as well. And then I know that on the one slide that we're showing, like 310,000 that was said other reasons. Did you have any input, or they just checked the box other reasons? I mean, that's a pretty big number that says other reasons. And I know we had a study done in Southwest Virginia, and it was, I think, a group out of New York, and we asked that question because our participation rate, and I think the state should have a chart that shows that 68% labor participation rate, that's in the whole Commonwealth, correct? Do you have that broken down as far as different areas? Because I think in Southwest Virginia, we may have been in the 50s if we were lucky. Right. And when we drilled into that, it was a myriad of speculation, but not, it was really hard to drill down what those other reasons was.
So if we can see, and I'll see if we can get that broken down regionally. These numbers are done by the census, so I'll see, how, when they're BLS numbers, we have more control over them because we do those numbers for the Commonwealth. And I did want to note, too, that when we talk about employed Virginians, that means anybody who's working. So you could be self-employed, you could be a 1099, you could work for somebody. When you talk about the CES numbers, which are the establishment numbers, that means you're working for a large establishment, and that's their payroll. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew the difference. When we talk about employed Virginians, that means that they are working, and it could be themselves who are working for
They're paying
somebody.
Taxes, basically. Okay. Because I know there's a large speculation, there's a lot of people that are working under the table, or maybe they're, cash or something. So I think that, I would love to know what some of those other reasons may be, if you had any of that. And also, one of the things that our small business owners and even larger business employers are saying is the lack of affordable housing and worker housing is really hard to recruit workers in. And you may have a slide that goes into that, I don't know. But I think we have to deal with that issue, and if we are going to entice workers to come to the Commonwealth, we're going to have to crack the nut on affordable worker housing or something to be able to get them in there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Hackworth, I don't have a slide on that, but we can get some information. And I know I was just talking to some folks in the Danville region about, we've got all this growth, but where are we going to put people in housing? And so that is, one of those driving factors too. It's not just affordable, but it's even is there the housing capacity? And so those pressures and providing some opportunities. I know some folks are looking into how to solve some of those issues, but I will make sure that
if we could talk to retirees instead of, if they didn't want to come back, maybe they just rent out their spare bedrooms.
Well, that depends on the regulations of the local government.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I think you brought up some good points related to when we're looking at the reason why folks are not working, but yet the labor force participation being as high as it is. But with the large amount of folks who retired in the last few years, is probably the largest driver of why those two things don't seem to match up. In line with that, as is mentioned, unless we're able to entice some of these retired folks, my dad's one who's recently retired, and he actually is working now a part-time job just to keep himself busy. But unless we're getting a lot more of those folks who will come back into the workforce, do we have data on folks who are ages 13 to 16, just how many of those there are in Virginia? Because that's the next wave of potential employees. And if there's not a large amount of those folks, and we don't have enough retirees who are going to come back in the workforce, unless we get a large influx of citizens moving into Virginia, we're going to continue to have this issue. So I don't know if we have the data, or if we're looking at that to have an understanding of what is possibly coming in the pipeline, so to speak. But for localities who don't have a lot of young folks coming into the workforce, it's probably going to be a rough few years. So I don't know where we're at on data, if that's something we look at as well.
Yeah, this certainly, Mr. Chairman, this is certainly something we can look at, and I know the governor talks a lot about, net migration, and now we're seeing people moving back into the Commonwealth, and he watches the U-Haul numbers and see where people are moving. So, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? And it's not a one-size-fits-all. This is really one of those key drivers of why the time was now to set up what we call Virginia Works, or the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. Talent is where the battle for business lies. And to continue to be the best state in the country to live, work, and raise a family, we need to make sure that we have that laser focus of where we are for talent, and driving that, and making sure that those who are not in the workforce right now and who are of working age feel compelled to participate, and that we can show them that there are many ways to drive that. And I will, talking about where the new workforce agency is customer focused. We are focused on the business need. We will have a division that's solely dedicated to business engagement that we will be building out. But that's a lot of the work that Kathy Byron, as our Deputy Director of External Affairs, is doing, is going out and listening to the businesses. Not just, okay, we know that people are having challenges with hiring, but what are the true skill sets? Where are you getting your training? What are the credentials that are needed? What are the different things that we can do that we can make sure that our programming is directed toward that, and that it is demand-driven. We can't just provide training services because it's a nice job to have, but it's actually an in-demand job, and we need to have that data that drives it. And then measuring our results. Is the work that we're doing turning into somebody getting a job? And a job that sticks, so that we look at it 6 months and 12 months later, and making sure that it's not we're just checking a box to make sure that they got the job, but it was actually something to continue to put them on the continued pathway of success in a career that matches their interest and is demand-driven for what our employers need. So that's one of our really focus areas for all of our programming. We're developing our metrics right now, but that primary metric is jobs, job placement. At the end of the day, did we help somebody get a job?
Awesome. Mr. Brown, I think you had a question?
Ms. Ruth, thank you so much for your report. Quick question for you. Would you happen to have the number for Virginia Beach, Norfolk area? How are we doing? Because according to your report, 4,494,000 people are working. That means half of the Virginians are working. Past summer, we had a big problem with the employee at the beach. And so many hoteliers, they could not clean their hotel because they could not find right people to clean the room. So we lost a lot of revenue. We still have that problem. And I just would like to know that what exactly are you guys doing for Hampton Road areas to find the right people?
Yeah. I think that's a challenge, right? So how do we do that, and how would we, pull, people off the sidelines to do that growth? But if you look at the job growth, there from January of 22 to September of 2023, you've got the 1.8% growth for the Virginia Beach, the Hampton Roads area. And you talk about the growth that you need. If you just look at Newport News Shipbuilding and the tens of thousands of people that they need to fill the jobs there too. And so there's just, it's from all levels of businesses. It is business size agnostic, and we need to really drive those demand-driven outcomes and engagement to grow those jobs.
Thank you.
Okay. So on another commission I'm on, we were concerned because of the employment issues. So many people cannot find employees that are willing to come and work. So we had the VEC come and tell us what was happening with the workforce, because we had stopped the rent assistance, we had stopped the extra unemployment benefits, and we still couldn't find people to come and work. And what she told us at that meeting was that women had stayed pretty constant because so many women held the jobs that were considered necessary and could work during COVID. It was more men who lost their jobs, and that as of last year, it was mainly men between the ages of 20 and 45 who were not reentering the workforce, and that people of retirement age were reentering the workforce. And so I think that's information that would be very valuable. The people on this commission, I think, could find that information very useful and try and figure out what's happening with the men between 20 and 45, if that is still a fact.
Yeah. So that was previously information that I provided when I was commissioner of VEC, so I think that might have been my presentation. I hope it was. But that's where we've seen a slight change, right? We have seen some of the men recovery into the participation of the workforce. And so this is where, where we thought that we had seen, it was interesting that because anecdotally, people were saying that we were losing more women during the pandemic, and you looked at the data, and of the women, we still stabilized around 60%. Now we're seeing a slight decrease of the women participating and a slight increase of the male participation, but the change in those demographics, and I think I've got that question down here, so we can revise those numbers and share those with you all as well. Thank you.
I think Senator Hackworth has one more, and then we want to let you get on to the rest of your presentation. So,
all right, thank you.
So, Carrie, I think, everybody on this commission would agree that really the attitude of our younger workforce and the work ethic of our younger workforce has changed dramatically in the last 2 to 3 decades. I know when most of us, I'm sure, was going into the workforce, we was driven to do that because we needed money, because we had maybe different metrics that we were trying to achieve. And I think that education and even starting out last week, I went ironically on a VCC tour to Tennessee, and I looked at what they're doing in Tennessee to help with the workforce development. And I think our community colleges in Virginia is woefully behind the curve, and because we really have had those as maybe a 2-year prep course to a higher education, when we should have been focusing on more skills and some of the targeted trades. And so I would really like to see a push to back to the trades, back to showing in high school you can make 6 figures by doing something with your hands. Construction is one of our businesses, and trying to find a plumber, trying to find an electrician, trying to find an HVAC, masonry, you name any of those, and it is in high demand. And for so many years, we have tried to push toward that higher education, and we need the dual paths, but I think that we have done that to our own detriment here in the Commonwealth, and we need to reinvest in our community colleges to be able to put the money and reinvent those and give them the tools that they need to be able to churn out, because they can do that in such a fast approach that some of the others pathways may not be available. For example, I can go to them if I need welders, and they can churn me out some welders in just a few weeks that are certified. So I think that, that's one thing I would like to see this commission and different ones to look at, is very driven workforce development programs, and even getting into the high schools to be able to showcase and market to our younger generation that they can work in the retail, they can work in some of these things and bring that professionalism back into the workforce. So I would just say that in some of the comments there.
Thank you.
if you will continue. So,
Sure,
thank
and
you.
that leads right into, what we want to do with the agency. It's National Apprenticeship Week, so, that's a big focus that we have. The Registered Apprenticeship Group has already moved over functionally to the new agency, as well as the Economic Information and Analytics team. In the early of next year, the remaining workforce components of the Virginia Employment Commission will functionally transition over to the new agency, and then our last group will be our team from the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act team from the community colleges will then come under the new agency. So we're real excited about all those opportunities to bring everybody together and really to collaborate, to be Team Virginia for how do we drive that activity. And it's really important for folks to understand there are so many pathways to success. There is not just one pathway. And, I think it's really incredible to see. I had the great opportunity last summer to go out and see a number of different apprenticeship sites and got to weld, which was really fun. But a lot of hard work, right? It's not an easy thing to do, though they shared with us that women are better welders. So it was good to see that a lot of different groups, because we have a steadier hand, I guess they say, or maybe they were just saying that to me, but it was, a great opportunity to see that, and I think that we've got to focus in all of that, and I know that Dr. DeRay, the new chancellor, aligns with Secretary Slater and the entire team focused on, we need to make sure that trades are not left behind. They are fundamental to so much of the work, and they look so much different than they did before. And, you still have to learn those tactile, but then you can also do the electronification of different things with technology, that there's many ways in those jobs that you can do great things. So I think some of it's really capturing the imagination of how do you translate that to folks in the middle school or high schools of what those opportunities are. So, but we have, leading into that, so the registered apprenticeship is a component of our on work-based learning division of the new agency. So we will also be focusing on internships and other on-the-job training skills. It's a great way to learn while you earn, like a registered apprenticeship is. And like you said, it is a very good sustainable wage. These are very high-paying jobs. That is a great career for so many Virginians. And I think there were some questions I talked about, and I mentioned our business engagement division that we'll have in the new agency, our work-based learning team. We're a startup agency. As you all know, we are, while we're in the code, we are not yet in the budget. So we have a little startup space that we have, and working with our team members as we build this up and prepare for the next fiscal year. But business engagement, keeping the customer and everything, the center of everything that we do, and the work-based learning are two of those key components that really help drive for small businesses and make sure that small businesses, being their largest number of employers in the Commonwealth, we need to make sure that we are very close to those owners. And I also wanted to mention two other programs, the Virginia Workforce Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, which is a partnership between Old Dominion University and Hampton University that they have that's focused on innovation and entrepreneurship, which was a grant that was supported by the Virginia Workforce Development Board in 2020 and is really a great synergy down in the Hampton Roads area. And then also through the VGIP program, which is that the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, VGIP has in the training programs, has always been one of the strongest training programs, and they do have the focus areas on the small business new jobs and retraining programs. So for growing existing small businesses and then also retraining programs, those are just a couple of the highlights. But I truly believe that all of our workforce development programs are targeted at small businesses because that is the largest number of our employers in the Commonwealth, and we need to make sure that employers of all sizes have the talent that they need, and they vary, right? What you need when you're just starting a business to what you need when you scaled a business are very different, but we need to make sure that we're listening and accommodating to all of those. So with that, I'll take any other questions that you all might have.
schools that are available. How do you plan on implementing that?
Yes, so Senator, I previously served as Deputy Secretary of Commerce and Trade in the McDonnell administration and served on the Virginia Workforce Development Board for 13 years as an appointee as well as on the business side. And the lack of awareness is something that was brought up time and time again, that employers don't know about the resources and those looking for jobs. There's just not a general awareness campaign. We do an incredible job in the Commonwealth of marketing tourism, of marketing come here, but we need to figure out how do we also market our talent. Because that's the competitive advantage. That's what every company that's starting here, scaling here, coming here, it's all, do you have that talent pipeline? And to be competitive, we've got to make sure that we are driving those talent and training programs, and most of those are going to be credential-based programs. On-the-job training programs is where our sweet spot is going to be. And so we are working on our logo and rallying around like the Virginia Works brand. So we've got Virginia Tourism, we have Virginia Energy, and Virginia Works. So Virginia Works for small businesses. I think there's some great opportunities to really leverage and work on that, and that's what we will be focusing on kind of in the second half of this year when we launch as a full agency in the next fiscal year. But it is a gap that we have identified that we need to make sure that we are looking at ways to do that. We are, by and large, a federally funded agency when you pull all of our resources together. So we do have some restraints around how we can spend those dollars, but I think there are very creative ways that you can do very low cost and get high impact and work with our partners. And I think having partnerships with our other sister agencies is really important. You know, we not only do we have the new agency, but we also work with all of the workforce programs throughout the Commonwealth and all of the agencies. The metrics will all be the same, and there's really great excitement. I will point out that the team at the Department of Rail and Public Transit has a workforce team, and they are focused on, we have a big challenge with the electrification. And so if you have the basic skill of electrification and then the different niches that need to be built upon that, if we're providing those basic skill training, then the employer can take that next step and get them trained specifically to their businesses. But we have that opportunity to do some of the, the baseline work. So it's really exciting to see what some of the other agencies are doing and how we can align those together so that we're all, working toward that same goal instead of kind of being these secret things that happen in different agencies or different programs. We need to let the world know what we're doing, and most important, our Virginia employers know what we're doing and meet those needs so that we're truly demand-driven to drive that engagement in that activity.
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So, I think one of the issues we have is there's 30-some, 40-some agencies that all are under the auspices of workforce development. And I think that the governor has said, he wants to rein those in, and I think that's a great idea. But, I think there's 29 community colleges in the
23.
state.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be a good vehicle to be able to let them get the word out and have some of that marketing campaign to go to them? Is that kind of the plan, or what is?
Yeah, I mean, we all need to align together, and how we all serve those different, talent needs in the different students or adults or young adults, how they all get into that pipeline. It shouldn't be there's multiple doors, there's one pathway. And while you might go to the community college, you wouldn't know the difference than if you went to the workforce agency, that somebody can tell you exactly, okay, this is what we can do to help you. And if we can't do that, then this is who can help you, and we're going to get you there. But yes, they do incredible work, and they are definitely a partner in this effort. It has got to be all in. It has got to be a team approach. We cannot continue to be siloed, and it doesn't really matter where you are, where you land. While we've consolidated a number of the programs into the new agency, they're not all in the new agency, nor do they need to be all in the new agency. But we got to be all driving so those common metrics are job placement. And so that's what we'll be working toward. But yes, the community colleges with their business advisory boards that should be helping them drive their programming are great allies and great partners in this effort.
Well, and to my point, I think that they are scattered all over the Commonwealth, and there's going to be different needs for workforce in different areas of the Commonwealth. So they should have, if they are doing their job, they should have the finger on the pulse of what that area needs.
Right.
Hopefully the businesses are utilizing them. So I think if they have the funding, because that was one of the things that I think I was disappointed to see in the budget or talks in the budget was there was no marketing money in there for them to get out and to, spread the message, hey, we can help you with your workforce. So I think that's one of the things that we have to do. We've got to do a good job marketing because we can have the best programs. And as a small business owner, I've got my head down. I'm trying to do payroll. I'm trying to sign contracts. I'm trying to make sure people show up to work. And I don't really have the time to go out and look for all these workforce. They need to come to us. They need to come to the small business community and say, this is what we have. We'll help you fill out the paperwork. I remember years ago, I had some that come and said, we'll give you $2,500 a piece to train your employees. And I said, great, I've got 20 that I need trained. They left me a stack of papers. I threw them in the trash.
Yeah.
And time to fill them out.
Yeah.
So I think that's the disconnect that government has with small business reality. You need somebody that actually sits there, fills out the paperwork, helps them to get that training that they need.
Yeah, and that gets back to that first point, right? Business engagement. Yeah.
Dr. Wright.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I heard you mentioning community colleges, and I want to say that in my area at least, their role has changed dramatically. It used to be go to the community college, get your 2-year degree, and it'd be a matriculation agreement where you could go on to a 4-year college. But that has changed dramatically. I know the Tobacco Commission has encouraged them to be more active in workforce development. I know just recently, Southside Virginia Community College had meetings throughout their district, throughout their service area, and they invited business owners to come in, anybody that wanted to. And they're promoting workforce development. They've already got a wonderful program in nursing. Mm-hmm. They've got a truck driver training school. They've got satellite campuses where they can teach people different trades. They've got a wonderful welding program. And I see, in my area at least, that's one of the most important things we can do is partner with the community colleges and the workforce and the business people. Microsoft located to our area, and we were very glad to get them. They've been there for a right good while. They ran into the same problem of being able to get qualified workers. But the community college has stepped in, along with the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center, and made a big difference in providing people. And they reach back into the high schools. They don't wait till they get out. This program starts in the high schools. Some of the high schools even have mentoring programs, and they have apprenticeship programs where they can go out into the community and work before they graduate. And so it's working pretty good in our area, but it needs to be even more because we've got a severe problem with housing that was mentioned, and also finding employees. So, but I do think we're making an effort in the community college in Southside, at least Southside Virginia Community College is doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, and I think, what you're hearing and what you all are saying and what I'm listening to is we have to be adaptable and responsive, right? Those are the things. We cannot be bureaucratic. And as somebody who has been an entrepreneur, that's the business-led principles that I lead with and run the agencies that way. It's really important. We just met with Elizabeth Creamer earlier this week, who is the Vice President for Workforce Development for both Reynolds and Brightpoint. So they're aligned together through the Community College Workforce Alliance here in the region. And she was talking about how their closeness to business and the economic development partners allowed them to prepare to be successful, for example, in building up the new pharmaceutical cluster in the region, because they were ahead and they listened and they saw where things were going, and so they were preparing the groundwork for those things to be able to be helpful. So sometimes you have to be reactive, but we need to be responsive. We need to be ahead of the game, seeing where the trends are going, being demand-driven, where we need to go, not where we've been. And I think so that's really, those principles are the foundation of the work that we're doing.
Any questions?
Thank you, Barry. I thought you did a great job. I've learned a lot sitting here. I found that, and from up at everybody up here, I've learned a lot. Running a small business is like rowing a boat upstream. You take your oars out of the water, you go backwards. And everybody's fighting the same problems. Rising costs make it difficult for people to buy things. And everybody wants more money. Some people, jump around a lot. And we found one of the things that has been successful for us isn't in the recruiting, it's in the retention. That you have to spend a lot more time now, with communication meetings, with 30-day reviews, and really getting a really good line of communication going so that you can help to develop the people. We're happy to train them. I mean, we train a lot of them, or teach them really. And but in order to get them to really stay, which it's very expensive. If you have in our business, in order to get a cashier to be able to run a register on Saturday when it's busy at the right speed, we spend over $2,000 in training. To lose that person for 50 cents is crazy, or $1. So you have to have the rate competitive, but to have a competitive rate is really not as expensive as the turnover. Mm-hmm. This turnover is very expensive, and it also decays all the margins. I mean, if you have high turnover, you have low margins. So, in the business, so we spent. Bennett Cerf said something great once. He said, "A pat on the back is a few vertebrae from a kick in the pants, but a mile apart in the results that it brings." And we really try to spend more time with appreciation. Now, I'd like to also add that you're talking about a very flexible workforce. I mean, people have different things. I mean, flexibility is much more important to younger people when they're coming on board than it is when I was younger. And, I'd get a schedule and I'd work it. But, there's things that come up, and we have to find that we're more flexible with them today. But in order to be more flexible, you need more people. So, we're struggling with the same problems. We're hitting them a little different, but and I agree with you, it's difficult to get the people in. But keeping them is what we find is the key. Anyway, thank you.
With the college, why don't we have some kind of internship, a summer internship with the school, with the high school, and give some incentives, because the work ethics are very important for any job. It's not that there is not job available. There are some jobs available, but there is no work ethics. Today's generation is completely different than how we grew up. So I feel that if we can have some kind of program in the high school, that if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become a HVAC guy, you have to do this course, but you also have to work a few hours in your summertime to get some credit. This will attract some of the people, some of the students, to go and look for their job. So in Virginia Beach, we work with Greenland High School, and it's really helping us out. So think about that program also.
Thank you. I know, by and large, most of the universities across the Commonwealth now are really, focused on those internships and the experiential learning, and it's becoming a requirement, at least the university level, and to reach down further into the high school, but I do know you see many, schools. I was an intern when I was in college, and that meant I got to start full-time the Monday after I graduated from college, and so that was, very successful for me and something that I'm very grateful for, and I haven't ever forgotten. And, I started out from Head Start and have been able to, take advantage of the opportunities and the different ways of pathways to, to get there. And I think, we do have to look at everything differently and constantly being reflective and responsive and adaptive to the changes in the economy and the workforce. And that's what we're focused on. So.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate very much you being here. And
Chairman Head, could I make one comment?
Yes, sir.
I want to congratulate Director Roth because I believe it was our last Small Business Commission meeting, or possibly the one before that. She was here showing us a PowerPoint of some pie-in-the-sky reimagining of workforce and how it's going to work in the agencies. And she's here today standing up the new agency, and I think that's probably like a world record. So I just want to congratulate her and the administration for that.
Thank you. I will certainly share that with the Secretary and the Governor. The Secretary did a lot of shoe walking and having to change some souls getting that passed. So appreciate it very much, and for all that support.
We expected it to be, and we knew it was going to be challenging, but it was.
The Secretary was reflective and responsive to make sure that we got that through to success. So
indeed,
thank you, Jay, for those comments.
Well, but thank you again for your time.
Yes.
Appreciate your sharing with us, and it's very, very informative.
Yeah,
So,
thank you all very much. And I took all my notes, and we'll get this data and send that back out to you all. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you very, very much. All right, moving on, we've got some upcoming session issues for the Commonwealth, and the one that is before us is Senate Bill 1047 from last session. That was referred over to us for some comments. To give you a background on this, first of all, I will tell you that I never voted on this because this went to a subcommittee in Commerce and Energy that I did not sit on. And for full disclosure, this is an issue that it passed the Senate in both at both the committee level and in the full body on a straight party line vote, and it met the same fate in a Republican-controlled subcommittee in the House of Delegates and ended its process there. This was companion bill to Delegate Maldonado's House Bill 2363. I'm in accomplishing what we need to today. It's my understanding that Senator McPike is planning to bring this bill or something similar to it again in the upcoming session, but we wanted to be able to provide just some comments, not a recommendation or a position on it, but just some comments if anybody has any on it. To give you the backstory from Senator McPike's, I spoke with him yesterday and got his background, so I will do the best I can to communicate what the intent was on this and the source behind it, which was that the Virginia Petroleum Franchise Act was created back in the late 70s, early 80s, at a time when the refiners were the ones that would also own the gas stations. So they would then also franchise out to the person to run that location, but they owned the station, they owned the real estate. And in order to protect the small business owners, the Petroleum Franchise Act was put into place, which basically said that if they decided to sell out, that the refiner had to give that station owner the first right of refusal to purchase the real estate. And then secondly, they could not tie the sale of that to a mandate that they continue to buy their fuel from that specific refiner, that they would be given the opportunity to go out on the open market with that. Subsequently, most of the refineries got out of the business, and the petroleum distributors picked up that business and are now in the same basic space as the refiners were. The difference is that they are somewhat different in their structure. Obviously, they are locally owned rather than conglomerate and stockholder owned, and have some different interests in maintaining that as an asset, perhaps. But they are, in the mind of Senator McPike and the constituents of his that asked for this bill to be brought, are functioning in the same space as the refiners were. And so Senator McPike's bill sought to move those distributors that owned the stations into the same posture as the refiners were. That met with some pretty strong resistance from the refiners, as you from the distributors, as you might imagine. And there was some pretty robust discussion about that. Obviously, I think that this commission is interested in and is tasked with promoting small business and helping to protect them. But at the same time, we have a constitutional mandate not to disrupt existing contracts. And I think that was part of one of the things that came up in the bill as a problem for it, in that it would seek to allow them to just dispense with the distribution agreements on that. So that's, as I understand it, what Senator McPike's posture was on the bill, and you've had a copy of it, I think, sent out to you with some background on that. Senator McPike was not able to be here today, but we do have Mike O'Connor from the Petroleum Association, the Petroleum Distributors Association, who wanted to give their side of this. And then what I'd like for us to do is, after that, just collect any comments from anyone that we might have. We'll collect those and then send those back in a more formalized form to Mr. O'Connor and to Senator McPike. So as they're having discussions going forward, maybe we can find a way to find what the common ground is, if that is in fact something that we can do. So, Mike, if you want to share with us your positions on this.
Sure, thank you. I'll try to be very brief. Mike O'Connor with Virginia Petroleum and Convenience Marketers. We're a statewide trade association. For those of you who don't know, we represent people like Hardy Petroleum and Cargo and Webb's and Parker and Woodfin and World Fuels. So if we're here before the Small Business Commission, we're in the right place. The bill was introduced last year. We knew nothing about it until the day of introduction, and obviously to define those people that I represent that I just mentioned as refiners, as diversified Wall Street traded oil companies is certainly something that we are opposed to. It took a while to really figure out what was the genesis of this legislation, and after a while we were able to crack the code. And basically what it is, there's 3 Sunoco dealers in Prince William County that want to use the code to make more money. And that's what this bill would accomplish. And basically, if it passed in its present framework, it triggers 59.121.15.2, and that basically says that if we have an existing supply agreement with a dealer, with a gasoline dealer, that upon passage of this bill, that supply agreement becomes null and void. And then I would just refer you to Article 1 of the Bill of Rights of the State of Virginia, Section 11. It says that the General Assembly shall not pass any law impacting the obligation of contracts. And that's precisely what this bill does. And as stated, the people I represent are not refiners. They supply gasoline to these dealers. The other thing that this would do, and my last point, is that would say that if one of these stations, and this was amended so it would only apply to Planning District 8 later in the process, if one of our guys decided they wanted to sell, they would be required to give the right of first refusal to sell that station to the dealer. They could not just do that of their free will. And I'm not sure why that's the case. As I said, maybe when you had Exxon and Mobil and Shell dealing with these dealers, maybe that was the case. But it wasn't Cargo. It wasn't Woodfin Oil. It wasn't World Fuels. It was not the people I represent. And to use the process in this way is something that we are very, very opposed to. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
So, Mike, help me out here just hypothetically. If
Sure.
I own a local convenience store with a fuel dispensing operation, and I decide I want to sell it. Okay, and I have a contract with maybe a fuel company for 5 years, 10 years, whatever that is. Basically, what this bill would do, it would allow me to annul that contract and sell that business, or I could just, if I didn't even want to sell it, I could just annul that contract and get my fuel from somebody that I'm getting a better price. Is that correct?
If this bill passed, that is correct.
Okay. So that being said,
I'm not sure I agree with that. If I could just
Okay.
could jump in, because my understanding, and correct me on that, is if you own it and you have the contract with the distributor, the issue is if the distributor owns the land and you are just running the business and leasing from them, and they decide to sell it, that's when this comes into play. But not if you decide to sell your interest in that. If you decided to sell your interest in that, that would be a completely different scenario. This affects the distributors only, and if they own the land and also are the distributor and are franchising to you, and that's where this comes into play. So it gets a little bit more complex.
That's where I was having questions on that. So it's if a distributor owns the land and I'm leasing that land from them, correct?
Yes.
And the distributor decides to sell the land, that they cannot sell the land without giving a first right of refusal. Is that correct?
To the dealer.
the
That is
dealer.
correct. And if the dealer takes the ROFR, the dealer can tear up the existing supply agreement.
Okay. So in essence, the contract should go in with the sale. That's what it is now, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to-
Unless they negotiate
Right.
early out or something like that.
Is most of these contracts, what's the length of most of these contracts? Do you have any idea?
I would say that's company by company. But I would also say, and I appreciate the opportunity to answer, is that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these going on. What we're talking about are 3 dealers in Prince William County.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Well, I think basically when you sign a lease, there should be a clause. The lease is for 5 years or 10 years, 15 years. Are we talking about selling the property at the end of the lease period or between the lease extension period? What are we talking about? Say I have a lease, I lease your gas station for 15
Right.
years. Somehow you decided after 5 years you want to sell that one. And our agreement says that this lease is good for 15 years. You have to give me a first preference, or you have to make sure that I should know about that things. Because I assume that the lease is good for 15 years, and middle of lease, if you decided to sell these things, that is definitely going to hurt me, because when I lease this for 15 years, I have some calculation. Based on that calculation, I invested my money into that business. So my question to you, can you break the lease and sell this thing?
I'm just trying to make sure I answered the question correctly. If you decide to sell your business before the lease is up, under this bill, you're required, if it's a gasoline location, you're required to sell it to that dealer. We did a study, and the study said that if this bill were in effect, it would likely decrease the value of that business for that location by 50%, because it would remove the opportunity for you to go out in the open market. It does talk about a fairly negotiated price, but who's to say that a gasoline location is the best use for the future use of that property? As you know,
Well, in gasoline business, the main business is the food. Gasoline, there is hardly any profit in gasoline business, 5 cents, 2 cents, 3 cents per gallon. But how much you can contribute to the food markets and how much you have food sale, that's how you make the profit. Now, again, going back to the point, if I lease that from you, yes, I should have the first right to buy from you. If I refuse, then you can take that to the outside market. That's how it works.
Under this bill, you would have the right of first refusal, and then if the dealer decided not to take that, it could be marketed on the open market.
Yes, but
Yes.
that's how it works.
That's how it's done today.
Right, and that's how it works in the business. Am I right or wrong?
I missed.
That's how it works in the business nowadays. If I refuse, then you can take to the outside market, and then you can sell it for the price you expect.
That is correct.
Well, that's not how it works now. The way that it works now is you don't have to give the person that is owning the station the first right of refusal to buy the land. If you want to just sell it out from under them, you can do that. And as far as breaking the lease that's attached to that, I don't think that's even addressed in this bill. I have no idea.
So in that case, that would not be a fair, because if I'm leasing the property from you,
Yes.
if I have invested on a good faith, okay, I'll lease your gas station for 5 years, and after 2.5 years, somebody offer you big money. You decided to sell that place, and you're asking me if I want to buy, I have to buy for that price. If the price is reasonable, yes. If the price is not reasonable, it's my decision to see whether I want to buy that business or not. Once I refuse, then it goes to the next person or it goes to the outside market.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions?
Real briefly, Mr. Chairman, if I can. I believe you mentioned Hardy Petroleum.
Yes, sir.
So just for reference, Hardy Petroleum is one of the great small businesses of the Danville region and has been for 100-plus years. So again, to try and compare them to someone like BP or Exxon is not comparable. So again, great small business. So I just, for my comments would be, wherever this ends up going, they're a great family-run small business, and so I don't want to do anything that will be detrimental to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, this, what we're seeing here is just changes made to a much more comprehensive act. So we're really not seeing the whole story. The act was actually introduced. It's existed since 1973. It's very old, and the issue the one part that we're talking about was just amended in 2014 by Delegate Tim Hugo. The right of first refusal was put in as an extra protection. So I think this is a lot more complicated than what we're seeing here today, and I don't know if it would be possible for us to possibly initiate a study on, I mean, could the commission do a study or something to get a little bit more information? And if so, I don't know that we could do it before session.
We don't do studies at the commission, but we could certainly, I think, as a part of the comment that might be a good idea. We've got some legislators that are going to be able to put in the request for a study that might be a good place to go as coming forward.
Yes, sir, I'm finished.
My comment is that one thing about it, question was 58, but it's a supplier and it located and operated in Planning District 8 only. And this is the type of thing that, it's fine for us to take a brief look at something like this, but this is going to need to go through probably subcommittee hearings, full committee hearings, and then before the House. There's going to be a lot of time for discussion, and I'm not sure what we can really do with no more information than we have, other than just consider it when the time comes up. And I've got some concerns about it myself so far as some of the language and so forth, but I don't think we have time today to do anything other than just take a look at it and listen to the comments that are made. Thank you.
Great. So, any other comments on this? So, all right, Mike, I think we'll formulate a few things, send you some information back out, and give something to Senator McPike, and check that off the list. So, thank you very, very much. All right, the last agenda item that we've got is just an opportunity for some quick discussion around this. Again, the idea of elevating Virginia's position as a pioneering hub for small business development and innovation. This was a bullet point that Senator Bell put on here. He and I chatted briefly about just some of the things we might want to just talk about, and rather than trying to go point by point, I'll just highlight those for anybody that's listening, to say highlighting the economic and political significance of small business, Virginia's aspiration for global leadership, promoting the entrepreneurial spirit, assessing the current business ecosystem, current efforts by the administration, optimizing existing tools and processes, political opportunities, learning from success stories, Virginia's current standing in business success metrics, and strategies to outpace our competitors around the nation as other states. And those are, that specifically when we're talking about competing with Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia and Texas and all the things we've got to do to stay on top of the game in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I'd just like to open it up for any comments or discussion that we have on that. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So I actually wrote that topic, and I sent it in about 2 months ago and kind of forgot about it until it popped up on the agenda a few days ago. And I was sitting here listening to all this about workforce development, and I realized how critically important that is. And I'm thinking, this is like horrible. Why would I start a small business? I can't get any employees. This is unsolvable. It'll take a generation. And, I started thinking about it. Workforce development is really important, but the flip side of workforce development shortage or need for workforce development is that's what drives innovation and automation, right? So particularly, you look in Japan's had a shrinking younger demographic that's really forced them to go into robotics. So part of the flip side of the workforce development issue is that should be driving innovation and automation. And so rather than go through this point by point, what's really driving this is what is Virginia doing to encourage small businesses to start up, grow, and thrive in this environment, and particularly small businesses that are bringing innovation and automation. So where do we want the next Amazon to come from? Do we want them to come from Seattle and then we try to bribe them to come here after they've made it? Or do we want the people with ideas to graduate from VCU, Virginia Tech, and start the business here and grow the business here? So that's what this is about.
Well, and I would ask, as a part of the discussion here, is turning that sort of on its head, not what are we doing to incentivize that, because I think that, again, based on we heard from Ms. Roth, and we had all of the stuff that's going on in the community colleges. I think we're doing a lot to try to incentivize that. A different question is, what are we doing to get in the way of that as a Commonwealth, and what can we stop doing? Because I think that's as much as anything else what we've also got to look, what barriers are we putting up, sort of to Travis's point here earlier of, we come up with great programs and then bring you a stack of forms that you need to fill out. That's getting in the way of making that happen. What are those things? So
we got to make the process very easy and business friendly. Sometime like if you want to open a new business, you got to fill up the application, get the permit, get the business license, get the loan. Process takes a long time. If we can ease that process and get the things that what we are looking for, but make sure the time is the essence. Sometimes you want to get a permit to build a house and it takes 6, 8, 9, 10 months. You're losing that business for that period of time. So if we can come up with some ideas that we can make the business friendly for a newcomer, for new people, they want to open their own business, then we will talk about the workforce. The first is like the system with the paperwork and all other stuff. So what can we do?
So true story, Mr. Chairman, true story. One of my lead craftsmen in my wood manufacturing business teaches a class in carpentry at the local community college. And they took a building and had the equipment stuff in the building. It was a large space that was able to have the construction saws equipment in there. And he said everything was doing good. They probably had, 10, 12 students. And he said suddenly, about 3 weeks into the class, some of the faculty came down, started measuring with tape measures, and started looking at things. And he went over and asked him. He said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, we have found out that the square footage of this building does not coincide with the restroom space, so they put a chain link fence in half of the space to shorten the space down that they could work, which by doing that, they was not able to get the boards into the saw just because of some regulation." And back to your point, it was crazy. And so I think that we are our own worst enemy. I think that we make things overly burdensome and complicated, and frankly had people drop out of class because they were not able to get to the equipment that they needed. And I asked them, I said, what are we doing here? And so I think, back to Mr. Chairman, your point, I think we need to look at what other states or other places are doing. Don't reinvent the wheel, but let's look at what they're doing. I am for getting a tour together, looking at who has doing successes. Let's look at what they're doing, and let's go there physically. Let's take notes. Let's bring it back to this administration, to the General Assembly, and say, here is some of the rules, the legislation, whatever we have in the state of Virginia that is hindering us from creating a vibrant workforce. When we are looking at, we're a border state. We compete with Tennessee, with Kentucky, with North Carolina, with West Virginia, are all aggressive states. Some has no income tax. So I think that we have to look at what they are doing and bring back a list to the General Assembly and to the administration and say, here is a list, here's why that we're struggling, the housing issue, the affordable housing issue. If we do not crack that nut, we are spinning our wheels. I have a large company in Pulaski County that just landed a $150 million contract with Walmart on making disposable egg cartons. And he said, Senator, we need 40 people to work. And they got a grant from the Commonwealth, an expansion grant, and it's tied to, and that's another thing with VEDP, we need to look at the formulas for grant, because some of those formulas are job creation. We're so much into job creation. When they started that plant, I think in Pulaski County it was like 6% was unemployment. Well, now it's 2%. There's just nobody there. So they have spent, another requirement was they had to spend so many $1 million of capital. I think it was like $35-40 million. They have spent $65 million because they have had to go to a lot of robotics and automation because they couldn't get the people, the employees. So they are busing employees from West Virginia, and the Commonwealth will not allow them to count those as employees, and is going to claw back some of the money that they had in the grants. And I said, this is crazy. So I think that we need to look at that, and we need to be active. This commission needs to be active in putting solutions to the General Assembly and to the administration to say, here is where here's where the choke point is. Here is where the stranglehold is. And we go and visit those businesses, those states, those counties that's getting it right, and we bring back and we do a report. That'd be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Great ideas. Great ideas.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I would suggest that maybe we hear from the SBSD, the Small Business Supplier Diversity Group, and particularly the Finance Authority, Small Business Finance Authority, which still sits, I think, under that. Prior, it was Department of Business Assistance. And to your point, Chairman Brott, there's, I believe, still a one-stop in place. So all of these comments and questions are so good and interesting, and visiting and bringing those things back. It makes me wonder, what do we have that we aren't utilizing, and what do we have that we're blocking and maybe not instituting? I know the Small Business Financing Authority has funds to help with grants and low interest loans, Are they getting them out there? Is the outreach where it should be? There's just so many questions about what those resources are, including certifications. When you talk about other states, maybe we're spending a lot of time certifying people when years ago we used to have reciprocating certifications with Tennessee and some other states. Could those employees who are maybe spending time doing that be freed up by doing a reciprocating certification and then put those resources to really grow and assist the development of small business? So I'd ask to maybe hear from them.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments? Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and thank you all very, very much for your time today and for your service on that. We've got some great comments, some great ideas going forward. Travis, I really like the idea of doing a tour. We mentioned last time, and Senator Bell and I talked about this, and an election year was just not the year to do it, but having an opportunity to hear from folks around the Commonwealth was the suggestion then, similar to what the Business Development Caucus did many years ago now, in listening to small business to say, what's in the way, what do you need? I think we could go back and do that, but also adding to that, having an opportunity to go and benchmark against the folks that are having success, that are beating us, to find out what are you doing, and putting that together. That's some great ideas, which we can put forward and then see who the legislators are on the next commission. And maybe I'm back and maybe I'm not. Maybe you are. Maybe, we'll see as the next wave goes around. But thank you all again very, very much, and appreciate it greatly. And we will stand adjourned.